There are moments in life when you feel forgotten. You pray, you wait, you hope, and yet nothing seems to change. Days turn into months, and months turn into years. You begin to wonder if heaven has gone silent. You start questioning whether your tears matter, whether your struggles are seen, whether your dreams were ever meant to come true. But what if the delay is not denial? What if the silence is preparation? What if the very thing that is making you restless today is the same thing that will make you weep with gratitude tomorrow? God's timing does not move according to human clocks. He is never rushed by panic, never pressured by deadlines, and never confused by circumstances. While you are worrying about how things will happen, God is already standing at the end of the story, seeing every detail perfectly arranged. He knows the exact moment when the blessing will not destroy you, but strengthen you. He knows the exact season when the door will not distract you, but fulfill His purpose in your life. Many people want immediate answers, immediate healing, immediate success, and immediate breakthroughs. But instant results often create shallow faith. Waiting develops something deeper. It teaches trust when there is no evidence. It teaches patience when emotions are unstable. It teaches surrender when control is impossible. And sometimes the greatest miracle is not the blessing itself, but the person you become while waiting for it. Think about how often people give up just before the breakthrough arrives. They stop praying because they think nothing is changing. They walk away because they cannot see movement. But God is always working behind scenes that human eyes cannot see. Roots grow in silence before trees rise in strength. Seeds remain hidden before harvest appears. The process feels invisible, but invisible does not mean inactive. There are prayers you prayed years ago that God still remembers. Not one tear has been ignored. Not one sleepless night has been wasted. Heaven keeps perfect records of every burden you carried. And sometimes God delays the answer because He is protecting you from receiving too little. If He gave you what you asked for too early, you might settle for less than His best. So He waits until the right people are in place, until the right opportunities are prepared, until your heart is mature enough to handle what is coming. You may feel like others are moving ahead while you remain stuck. You see people succeeding, celebrating, achieving dreams, while you are still struggling to understand your own journey. But comparison is dangerous because you do not know the full story behind another person's season. Someone may bloom early and fade quickly, while another blooms later and stands stronger for years. God writes every story differently because every purpose is different. There are seasons where God intentionally removes comfort, so you will learn dependence on Him. He allows uncertainty so you will stop trusting temporary things. He allows delays so you will discover that your peace cannot depend on outcomes. And while you think you are waiting on God, often God is waiting on you. Waiting for your faith to deepen, waiting for your character to grow, waiting for your heart to align with His will. One of the hardest truths to accept is that God often works slowly. Human nature wants speed, but spiritual growth usually happens gradually. A mountain is not formed overnight. Strength is not developed in comfort. Wisdom is not gained without pain. Sometimes the very hardship you are trying to escape is the tool God is using to prepare your future. There will come a day when everything suddenly makes sense. The closed doors, the disappointments, the heartbreaks, the delays, the unanswered prayers. You will look back and realize that what felt like rejection was actually protection. What felt like punishment was preparation. What felt like abandonment was guidance toward something greater than you imagined. God's timing has a way of arriving unexpectedly. One moment everything feels impossible, and the next moment your life changes completely. A phone call, an opportunity, a breakthrough, a healing, a restoration. Suddenly the season of waiting gives birth to a season of joy. And when it happens, the tears will come, not from pain, but from overwhelming gratitude. You will realize that God was faithful the entire time, even when you doubted Him. Faith is believing before seeing. Anyone can trust when answers are visible, but real faith continues even in uncertainty. Real faith wakes up every day believing that God is still working, even when circumstances suggest otherwise. It chooses hope when disappointment feels easier. It chooses prayer when silence feels discouraging. Underestimate what God can do in a single moment. Years of struggle can be reversed by one divine appointment. One encounter can restore what was broken. One season can erase years of sorrow. God specializes in sudden turnarounds that human reasoning cannot explain. That is why you must never lose hope during the waiting period. Delays are not permanent. Seasons change. Darkness does not last forever. Sometimes God waits until your strength is gone so you will stop depending on yourself. As long as people believe they can fix everything alone, they often push God aside. But brokenness creates space for surrender. Weakness creates room for grace. And when you finally release control, you begin to see God move in ways you never expected. The pain you carry today may become the testimony that encourages someone tomorrow. Your endurance may become proof that faith survives storms. Your story may remind others that God never abandons His children, even in their lowest moments. Nothing is wasted in God's hands. Not the tears, not the failures, not the waiting, not the loneliness. He uses every part of the journey for a greater purpose. You may be closer to your breakthrough than you. You realize the enemy often attacks hardest when blessings are near. Discouragement becomes intense because your future carries purpose. Fear grows louder because something powerful is approaching. But do not allow temporary emotions to make permanent decisions. Keep trusting. Keep praying. Keep believing. The same God who carried you through past battles will not fail you now. There are miracles developing in silence. Doors opening that you cannot yet see. Answers moving toward you at this very moment. God is arranging conversations, changing hearts, removing obstacles, and preparing paths long before you arrive there. Even when nothing appears to be happening, heaven is still at work. And one day, when the timing finally arrives, you will not need anyone to convince you that God was with you. Your heart will know. The weight you carried for so long will suddenly break. The confusion will turn into clarity. The sorrow will turn into joy. The waiting will turn into worship. And the tears that fall from your eyes will not come from despair anymore, but from the overwhelming realization that God's timing was perfect all along. There are moments in life when you begin to question what? Either God has forgotten you. You pray with sincerity, you cry in private, you hold on to hope for as long as you can, but nothing seems to change. The doors remain closed. The answers do not come. The burden feels heavier with every passing day. In those painful seasons, it is easy to believe that silence means abandonment. But many times, what feels like God ignoring you is actually God preparing something greater than you imagined. Human beings naturally want quick answers. We want immediate relief from pain, instant solutions to problems, and fast results to our prayers. But God does not operate according to human impatience. He sees the entire picture while we only see the present moment. We focus on today's discomfort, but God focuses on our eternal purpose. What appears delayed to us is perfectly scheduled in heaven. One of the hardest lessons in faith is understanding that delay does not mean denial. Just because something has not happened yet does not mean it will never happen. God often works in seasons of preparation before He releases seasons of fulfillment. Before the blessing appears publicly, work is happening privately. Hearts are being shaped, circumstances are being aligned, and unseen obstacles are being removed. Sometimes people pray for opportunities they are not yet prepared to handle. They ask for success without the wisdom to manage it. They ask for influence without the character to sustain it. They ask for open doors without realizing that walking through those doors too early could destroy them. So God waits, not to punish them, but to protect them. His delays are often acts of mercy. There are blessings that require spiritual maturity. There are assignments that require patience. There are relationships that require healing before they can survive. And because God loves His children deeply, He refuses to release certain things until the timing is right. He is not trying to frustrate you. He is trying to preserve you. Think about a farmer planting seeds into the ground. The farmer does not panic because nothing appears above the surface immediately. He understands that growth begins underground. Roots develop before fruit appears. In the same way, God is often growing unseen roots in your life during the waiting season. Faith is growing. Strength is growing. Wisdom is growing. Dependence on Him is growing, even though you cannot yet to see visible results. Spiritual growth is still taking place. Many people give up because they judge God's faithfulness by visible evidence. If they cannot see movement, they assume nothing is happening. But heaven often works silently. God specializes in invisible preparation. While you are worrying, He is arranging details you cannot yet understand. While you are crying over closed doors, He may be protecting you from pain you never saw coming. There are moments when disappointment becomes a hidden blessing. You may have prayed desperately for something that never happened, only to later realize that God saved you from heartbreak, regret, or destruction. At the time, it felt unfair. At the time, it felt painful. But later you understood that God's wisdom was greater than your understanding. Sometimes God delays because the right people are not yet in position. Sometimes He delays because your future requires experiences you have not yet gained. Sometimes He delays because the blessing itself is connected to a larger purpose that involves many moving parts. Nothing about God's timing is random. Every season has meaning. People often compare their lives to others and wonder why someone else's breakthrough came sooner. They see others succeeding while they continue struggling. They watch others celebrate while they remain in waiting seasons. But comparison creates discouragement because every life has a different assignment. God is not writing identical stories for everyone. Some people bloom early, others bloom later. But late blooming does not mean lesser value. A tree that grows slowly can develop stronger roots than one that grows too fast. In the same way, the waiting season often produces deeper stability in a believer's life. Quick success can create pride, but delayed success often creates humility and gratitude. The person who has walked through valleys learns how to trust God in ways that comfortable people never understand. Waiting also reveals what truly controls the heart. When prayers are delayed, people discover whether they trust God Himself or only the blessings He provides. It is easy to praise during abundance. It is easy to trust when life feels comfortable. But faith becomes genuine when a person continues believing even while facing silence. There are prayers God answers immediately, but there are others He answers gradually, because the process itself contains purpose. The waiting season teaches surrender. It teaches endurance, teaches dependence. It strips away self-reliance and draws people closer to God's presence. Many believers discover intimacy with God during painful seasons they would never choose for themselves. You may feel exhausted from waiting. You may wonder how much longer you can continue believing. But do not assume that God's silence means inactivity. Heaven is still working even when earth feels quiet. Doors are opening that you cannot yet see. Circumstances are shifting beyond your awareness. God is arranging moments that will eventually make sense. One day, the thing you cried about may become the testimony that strengthens your faith forever. One day you may look back at this season and thank God for every delay, every closed door, every unanswered prayer that protected you from settling for less than His best. What feels painful now may later reveal itself as one of the greatest acts of divine love in your life. God never arrives late. Human beings may panic because they measure time differently, but heaven's timing remains perfect. When God opens a door, no force can close. When He releases a blessing, no delay can stop it. And when the appointed season finally arrives, everything can change in a moment. Years of struggle can suddenly lead to breakthrough. Long seasons of sorrow can suddenly turn into joy. The same God who allowed the waiting season also controls the fulfillment season. There are miracles being prepared in silence right now. Answers are moving toward you even if you cannot yet recognize them. God sees every tear, hears every prayer, and understands every burden you carry. The delay is not proof that He has abandoned you. It may simply be proof that He is preparing something greater than you asked for, something deeper than you imagined, and something perfectly designed for the exact moment your life is ready to receive it. Waiting is one of the most difficult experiences a person can endure. Human nature wants movement, progress, and visible answers. People feel comfortable when they can control outcomes and predict what will happen next. But there are seasons in life when God allows uncertainty to remain. He allows prayers to go unanswered for a while. He allows doors to stay closed longer than expected. And in those moments, faith is tested deeply. Most people do not realize that waiting seasons carry spiritual purpose. They are not empty seasons. They are not wasted seasons. God uses waiting to shape the heart in ways comfort never could. Some lessons can only be learned through delay. Some strength can only be developed through endurance. And some levels of faith can only grow when a person has nothing left to rely on except God Himself. Patience is not developed when life is easy. Patience is formed when a person must continue trusting even while nothing seems to change. Anyone can remain hopeful for a short period of time, but extended waiting reveals the true condition of the heart. It exposes fear, pride, impatience, and self-reliance. It forces people to confront the reality that they cannot control everything. There are moments when waiting feels painful because it attacks human pride. People want immediate understanding. They want to know exactly what God is doing and why He is doing it. But faith requires surrendering the need to understand everything. Faith says, even when I cannot see the path clearly, I will still trust the one leading me. God often allows waiting because He is more concerned about a person's character than their comfort. Human beings focus on external blessings, but God focuses on internal transformation. A person may pray for success while God works on humility. They may pray for opportunities while God works on integrity. They may pray for influence while God develops wisdom. The blessing may be delayed because the foundation is still being built. Without strong foundations, great blessings can become dangerous. Success without humility creates pride. Power without wisdom creates destruction. Influence without character creates corruption. That is why God sometimes slows the process. He understands that preparation matters just as much as fulfillment. Waiting also teaches dependence on God. As long as people believe they can solve everything through their own strength, they often keep God at a distance. But difficult seasons reveal human limitations. They remind people that money cannot fix every problem, intelligence cannot erase every burden, and human effort cannot control every outcome. Weakness creates space for surrender, and surrender creates deeper intimacy with God. Many people discover the presence of God most clearly during service. Asanas of uncertainty. When distractions are removed and comfort disappears, the heart begins seeking Him more sincerely. Prayer becomes deeper. Worship becomes more meaningful. Faith becomes more personal. Pain has a way of stripping away superficial spirituality and revealing what truly matters. The waiting season also teaches endurance. In a world that celebrates quick results, endurance has become rare. People often quit when answers take too long. They walk away from dreams too early. They stop praying because discouragement becomes overwhelming. But spiritual maturity requires the ability to remain faithful, even when emotions fluctuate. Endurance means continuing to trust, even while carrying unanswered questions. It means believing that God is still good, even when circumstances feel painful. It means waking up every day and choosing faith instead of bitterness. That kind of endurance cannot be learned through comfort alone. It is developed through trials, delays, disappointments, and seasons where God feels silent. There are times when God intentionally removes visible support systems so a person will learn complete dependence on Him. Sometimes careers become unstable. Sometimes relationships disappoint. Sometimes plans fall apart unexpectedly. In those moments, people often feel abandoned, but God may actually be drawing them closer. He removes temporary securities so they will discover that true security exists only in Him. Waiting seasons also expose hidden idols in the heart. People may believe they trust God fully until something they deeply desire is delayed. Suddenly, frustration appears. Anxiety increases. Anger rises. And through that struggle, God reveals areas where trust still needs to grow. The waiting process becomes spiritual refinement. Refinement is never comfortable. Just as gold must pass through fire to remove impurities, the human heart often passes through hardship to remove pride, fear, selfishness, and unbelief. God is not trying to destroy His people during difficult seasons. He is purifying them. He is shaping them into stronger, wiser, and more faithful individuals. Sometimes the greatest miracle is not the blessing itself, but the transformation that happens during the journey toward it. A person who has walked through pain with God often develops compassion for others. A person who has survived hardship learns gratitude. Deeper ways. A person who has experienced seasons of waiting learns how to trust God beyond emotions and circumstances. There are lessons learned in valleys that can never be learned on mountaintops. Valleys teach dependence. Valleys teach humility. Valleys teach perseverance. And while nobody enjoys those seasons, many people later realize that their deepest spiritual growth happened during their hardest battles. God's timing often feels slow because He works with eternity in mind while humans focus only on the present moment. People pray for immediate relief, but God sees future consequences, future opportunities, and future responsibilities. He knows exactly what timing will strengthen a person instead of harming them. Waiting seasons remind believers that faith is not based on visible evidence. Faith continues even when results have not appeared yet. It trusts that God is still working behind the scenes. It believes that silence does not equal absence. Heaven may appear quiet, but divine activity never stops. One of the enemy's greatest strategies during waiting seasons is discouragement. He wants people to believe that nothing will ever change. He wants them to grow it, red, bitter, and hopeless. But discouragement loses power when a person remembers God's faithfulness in previous seasons. The same God who carried them before will carry them again. Patience does not mean doing nothing. It means remaining faithful while trusting God's process. It means continuing to pray even when answers are delayed. It means continuing to hope even when circumstances appear unchanged. It means choosing trust over fear repeatedly. God never wastes waiting seasons. Every delay contains purpose. Every hardship contains lessons. Every trial contains opportunities for growth. And while the process may feel painful now, there will come a day when the person who endured faithfully will look back and realize that the waiting season produced strength they could never have gained any other way. There are moments in life when everything can change without warning. A person may spend years struggling, praying, waiting, and enduring disappointment, only to experience a sudden breakthrough that transforms everything in a single season. That is the power of divine timing. God can accomplish in one moment what human effort could not achieve in many years. He is not limited by delays, obstacles, or impossibilities. What seems unreachable to people remains completely possible with Him. Many individuals lose hope because they focus too much on their present circumstances. They see closed doors, financial pressure, broken relationships, emotional exhaustion, and unanswered prayers. Over time, discouragement begins convincing them that their situation will never improve. But one of the greatest mistakes a person can make is assuming that current pain represents their final chapter. God's ability to restore and transform a life is far greater than human understanding. Throughout life, there are seasons where everything appears still. Nothing changes outwardly. Prayers seem unanswered. Opportunities seem distant. But God often works quietly before sudden breakthroughs occur. Just because you cannot see movement does not mean heaven is inactive. Invisible preparation often comes before visible miracles. A seed remains buried in darkness before it breaks through the ground. During that hidden season, growth is still happening even though nobody can see it. In the same way, God may be preparing blessings, opportunities, healing, or restoration in ways you can not yet recognize. The silence is not proof of abandonment. It is often proof of preparation. There are people who nearly gave up just before their breakthrough arrived. They became tired of waiting. They became discouraged by repeated disappointments. They questioned whether their prayers mattered anymore. But if they had walked away too early, they would have missed the very thing God was preparing for them. This is why faith during difficult seasons matters so deeply. Sometimes the greatest blessing is closer than you realize. God's timing often surprises people because it rarely follows human expectations. Humans expect gradual improvement according to predictable patterns, but God sometimes changes circumstances suddenly and powerfully. One phone call can open a new opportunity. One conversation can restore a broken relationship. One unexpected moment can shift an entire direction in life. God is able to create opportunities that no human effort could manufacture. Many people underestimate how quickly life can change when God moves. A season of sorrow can suddenly become a season of joy. Years of confusion can suddenly become clarity. Long periods of struggle can suddenly give birth to peace and stability. The same God who allowed the waiting season also controls the breakthrough season. There are moments when God intentionally allows people to reach the end of their own strength so they will fully depend on Him. As long as individuals believe they can control everything themselves, they often rely more on personal ability than divine guidance. But when human strength fails, hearts become open to trust God more deeply. Brokenness often becomes the doorway to transformation. Some of the greatest testimonies come from people who once believed their situation would never change. They faced impossible circumstances, painful losses, and overwhelming discouragement. Yet somehow God brought restoration in ways they never expected. That is why no situation should ever be considered hopeless when placed in God's hands. Fear often becomes strongest right before breakthrough arrives. The enemy wants people to quit during the final stage of waiting. He whispers lies that nothing will change, that prayers are useless, and that hope is foolish. But those moments require spiritual endurance. Feelings cannot always be trusted. Circumstances cannot always predict future. God's promises remain stronger than temporary emotions. There are blessings developing right now that you cannot yet see. Doors are opening quietly. Connections are being formed. Obstacles are being removed. Hearts are being changed. God works beyond human vision. While you are worried about visible evidence, heaven is already arranging future moments. One divine encounter can redirect an entire life. One answered prayer can erase years of discouragement. One breakthrough can restore hope that seemed completely lost. That is why believers must continue praying even when answers are delayed. God's timing can suddenly shift everything in ways human reasoning could never predict. Sometimes people become so focused on their suffering that they forget God's ability to redeem pain. Yet many testimonies are born from the hardest seasons of life. The struggle that nearly destroyed someone can later become the story that inspires others. The valley that once caused tears can later become evidence of God's faithfulness. Nothing God allows is wasted. Every tear, every delay, every disappointment, and every season of confusion can eventually serve a greater purpose. Even painful experiences can become preparation for future assignments. God has the ability to transform broken pieces into something meaningful and beautiful. There are moments when people look back on past hardships and suddenly understand why certain prayers were delayed. They realize that God protected them from relationships that would have harmed them, opportunities that would have distracted them, or situations they were not yet prepared to handle. What once felt unfair later reveals itself as divine wisdom. Faith requires believing that breakthrough is possible even before visible evidence appears. It means trusting God during uncertainty. It means holding on to hope while circumstances remain difficult. Real faith says, even if I cannot yet see the answer, I believe God is still working. You may feel tired from waiting. You may feel discouraged because life has not unfolded the way you expected. But never underestimate what God can do in one appointed moment. He is able to restore lost years. He is able to heal wounded hearts. He is able to open doors no human being can close. He is able to bring peace where chaos once existed. The same God who carried people through previous battles remains faithful today. He has not forgotten your prayers. He has not ignored your tears. He understands every burden you carry, every fear you fight, and every silent struggle hidden within your heart. And even now, while you are waiting, He may already be preparing the very breakthrough that will one day make you cry tears of gratitude. There will come a moment when the pain of waiting finally gives way to the joy of fulfillment. The heaviness will lift. The confusion will fade. The burden you carried for so long will suddenly make sense in light of God's greater plan. And when that moment arrives, you will realize that every delay, every hardship, and every unanswered question was leading you toward a future perfectly designed by the hands of God. So if you are in a season of waiting right now, do not allow discouragement to convince you that God has forgotten your name. The delays are not proof of His absence. The silence is not proof that He stopped listening. Every prayer you whispered in weakness, every tear you cried in private, and every moment you held on to faith when life became difficult has been seen by heaven. God is still working in places you cannot see and in ways you cannot yet understand. There are blessings being prepared that are bigger than your current pain. There are answers moving toward you at the exact moment God knows you are ready to receive them. What feels like a long delay today may one day become the reason you praise Him with tears in your eyes. The waiting season is shaping your faith, strengthening your spirit, and preparing your heart for what is ahead. Nothing has been wasted. Not the heartbreak, not the loneliness, not the disappointment, and not the struggle. One day you will look back and realize that God was guiding you even when the path felt uncertain. You will understand why certain doors remained closed and why certain prayers took longer than expected. And when His timing finally unfolds in your life, the joy will be so overwhelming that every painful season will suddenly make sense. The same God who carried you through the storm will also lead you into the breakthrough, and the tears you cry will no longer come from sorrow, but from gratitude for a God whose timing was perfect all along. Trust Him even when you cannot trace Him, because God is never late, and your miracle is closer than you think.